This is Mission Control Houston. We want to welcome you to today's Space Station Live. It is Tuesday, August 27th, 2013. This is a live view inside the International Space Station's Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Today's flight director, who is not in the room right now because the space station is actually in a loss of signal, is Tony Sikachi, and the Capcom, the voice you'll be hearing later on during the hour talking to the crew, is veteran astronaut Doug Wheelock. The crew on board currently, Expedition 36, includes the commander, Pavel Vinogradov, as well as Alexander Mazurkin and Chris Cassidy. You see those three members there from left to right. They're also on the right half of the screen, Karen Nyberg, NASA astronaut. There in the middle, Luca Parmitano. And there also in the front part of the screen is Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin. The crew's very busy on board the space station today. The biggest news of the day is that Luca Parmitano and Chris Cassidy have been working on that troublesome spacesuit that Luca Parmitano was wearing back on July 16th. You're taking a look at pretty much what Luca Parmitano had seen during that eventful spacewalk that lasted 1 hour and 32 minutes. What the crew has been doing today is basically powering up the spacesuit almost as if they were about to conduct another spacewalk. Obviously, Luca's not inside the suit this time, but they did verify that this water problem with this water coming up into the helmet still does exist. This is important because as the ground teams and the crew on board attempt to recreate this problem, they want to make sure, obviously, that the problem is still there. The investigation does continue into this spacesuit on two different fronts. The engineering teams are taking a look at the root cause. They're going to have the crew begin to manipulate this suit and to take some of the parts out that will be returned to Earth for investigation. But they needed to verify that this problem did exist before they do that, so sort of form a baseline so that anything they do to the suit in the future, any changes they do make, they know whether those will work or not. So again, you're seeing some of this water come up into this spacesuit helmet. This is very similar to what Luca Parmitano did experience back on July 16th as he and Chris Cassidy stepped outside for this spacewalk that was due to last about 6.5, 7 hours. It was cut short down to 1 hour and 32 minutes whenever Luca did feel this water coming up back behind his head. Of course, that is not something that you want to have happen while you're out doing a spacewalk, so he and Chris did cut the spacewalk short. So we will continue to monitor this investigation, and as the Mishap Investigation Board, which is the second front that is taking a look at this spacesuit, it is examining bigger lessons learned that could be applied across NASA while the engineering team continues its work. And as these things develop and they begin to find what the root cause is, we will, of course, update you both here on Space Station Live and on the NASA website, www.nasa.gov. While this activity has been taking place, Karen Nyberg has been busy as well working on the experiment known as Spheres. You've seen it quite a bit here on NASA television throughout these expeditions on board the space station. It looks like something out of a movie, but these are basically free-flying satellites or pods that are designed to test out formation flying on board the International Space Station. This particular Spheres experiment, which is called Spheres Rings, looks a little bit different. It is run out of DARPA and the University of Maryland. And what it attempts to do is not only test formation flying, but also whether these two little mini satellites or three mini satellites could transfer power between them, which of course has direct implications to bigger satellites that could be up in orbit. So that activity will continue throughout Karen's afternoon. Luca Parmitano himself has been working not only on that troublesome spacesuit with Chris Cassidy, but he's been working on something that is called InSpace 3. This is an experiment that takes a look at something called colloids. These are sort of particles that are suspended in liquids. There's different forms of this experiment on board the International Space Station, but it has direct implications to life here on Earth, because these particles that are in these fluids change properties whenever a magnetic field is applied to it. They actually solidify, and the liquid can change. Now, what that means for us here on Earth is that this particular type of colloid or liquid could be used in brake systems. It could be used in buildings and bridges to make them more earthquake-proof, or things such as that, and also robotics. So this InSpace 3 will continue throughout Luca's afternoon. The crew also has several different crew Earth observation opportunities today. They're going to be passing over Tanzania. They will also be taking a look at some of the flooding that is occurring in eastern Russia. This is considered some of the worst flooding in almost 100 years. There's more than 32,000 people that are being affected by it. The Amur River has actually broken its banks and is currently overflowing, so they will take a look at that. There's also some wildfires taking place over the United States, and some of the smoke plumes should be visible from the crew. They did capture some images of that yesterday, so if you haven't seen those, just log on to nasa.gov/station and take a look at them. And of course, you can always take a look at all of the rest of the crew Earth observations by visiting the NASA website to take a look at all the imagery that the crews have captured throughout their times on orbit. Finally, a programming reminder for tomorrow. We will have a crew news conference from here at the Johnson Space Center. That'll be Expedition 38 and 39. That'll begin at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The crew will be talking to various traditional and social media members here at the Johnson Space Center about what to expect as they get ready to launch coming up toward the end of the year. Again, that Expedition 38, 39 Crew News Conference coming up on NASA television tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. As we talked about at the top of the broadcast, Chris Cassidy and Luca Parmitano have been taking a look at the spacesuit that Luca wore back during that spacewalk, which took place in July, on July 16th. We're going to play you now the extended video that takes a look at what the crew was working on and some conversations between Chris Cassidy and Doug Wheelock, who's the Capcom here on the ground, and listen to what the crew was noticing as they worked on this suit and sort of recreated this issue of the water in the helmet. Again, this is video from earlier this morning as Chris Cassidy, Luca Parmitano worked on this troublesome spacesuit that Luca had worn during their spacewalk. They are taking some photos there. There are some conversations between Chris Cassidy and Doug Wheelock that took place as they were taking a look at this. So you'll hear that audio periodically as we take a look at this extended clip. As we can see, Parmitano there having a bit of a sense of humor about the predicament he was in back during the spacewalk. Again, what they were doing is really taking a baseline reading of this suit. They turned it back on as if it was about to go out the door. The reason they're doing this is to verify that whatever the issue is, which they have yet to identify, is still there, which, as you can see, the water coming up into the helmet, and as much as on the front of the glass there, the issue is still in that suit, which actually is a good thing for the controllers as they try to find the root cause of what caused this. As we talked about, this investigation sort of has two fronts to it. The engineering community is continuing to examine what could have caused this water leak inside the suit. Meanwhile, a mishap investigation board was formed shortly after the spacewalk. That is to take a look at sort of the bigger lessons learned in this. So those two boards are continuing their work down parallel paths. Once they exactly figure out what could have caused this inside this suit, they will get us back up on a footing where we can conduct another spacewalk should the need arise. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, we're watching video played by the crew earlier this morning as they were working on this spacesuit that Luca Parmitano was wearing back on July 16th, as he and Chris Cassidy stepped outside to conduct a 6.5-hour spacewalk, but water began to form in the back of Luca's head inside his spacesuit. You're getting a sense of exactly what that may have felt like, even though this is a small amount of water that we're taking a look at. But it did cause that spacewalk to get cut short down to 1 hour and 32 minutes as they moved Luca pretty quickly back inside and got him back into the safety of the inside of the space station itself. Now, the reason that they're doing this today is to really turn the spacesuit back on as if it was about to go back out. Obviously, Luca's not inside at this time, but they did verify that whatever this issue is inside the inner workings of the spacesuit does still exist. Now, that is a good thing because as they begin to manipulate this suit and to swap out some of the parts and to determine which parts they would like to bring back to Earth for further examination, there's a Soyuz flight coming up that they could possibly bring some parts back on. There's some commercial cargo vehicles coming up in the next few months that they could send some parts back on as well. But the reason they need to recreate this problem is because as they start to change things, they need to sort of have a baseline to compare it to. And obviously, if this problem did not exist anymore, it would sort of be a bigger mystery, which of course is not a good thing. So the work does continue on the ground and up in space to have the crew test out this suit, recreate this problem. But you see the water increasing there as we continue to watch this extended video clip here on NASA television. Chris Cassidy there giving the ground teams an up-close and personal look at the spacesuit as this water continues to build. You can clearly see why this was such an issue while Luca Parmitano was inside the spacesuit himself back on July 16th. The water doesn't go anywhere whenever it's up in zero gravity, and it would be very hard for it to for Luca to get it away from his face as it collected there in the front of the visor of the spacesuit. This is Mission Control Houston. We've been showing you a fairly long video clip from on board the International Space Station earlier today as Chris Cassidy, Luca Parmitano, took a look at the spacesuit that Luca was wearing back on July 16th during that spacewalk that got cut short because water was leaking into his helmet. What they were doing today is turning on the suit as if it were about to go back out on a spacewalk. Luca obviously not inside at this time, but the reason that that is important is because they needed to verify that whatever this issue is still is there. And as you can see, plenty of water still coming up into the spacesuit. That is actually a good thing because now they can help identify where the problem is and have a baseline to compare things to, since the crew over the next several days will be asked to manipulate this suit, remove some parts, trade some things out. This will do a couple of things. It will see if, one, it fixes the problem and helps them identify the smoking gun. But number two, it will also help them identify which pieces will come back to Earth. There are a couple of flights coming up. There's a Soyuz rotation coming up soon that could possibly bring back some small pieces. There's also some commercial cargo vehicles coming up, namely the SpaceX Dragon, in the next several months that could be used to bring back some bigger pieces of the suit. Those pieces have not been identified yet in terms of what is coming back and what is not. But this work that the crew is going to be doing will help determine which of those parts that the ground teams and the engineering community want to see back on Earth to help them investigate what could have gone wrong with this suit. So again, this work will continue over the next several days. Of course, we will update you here on Space Station Live and on nasa.gov/station as this work continues. Again, there are two different independent efforts. The engineering community is continuing its work, going through a very methodical checklist of what could have gone wrong with the suit. They are continuing to eliminate some possibilities, ultimately leading them down to what we call the smoking gun. There's also a mishap investigation board that is taking place. It's looking at sort of a bigger view of the procedures that went into this and the suit itself to see if there are bigger lessons learned that can be applied across all of NASA. So both of those organizations will continue their work, and again, we'll update you as soon as we know something conclusive. Meanwhile, the crew is continuing to work throughout the rest of the complex on a variety of different things. The Russian crew members have what is known as the SINER Ocean Observations experiment we're running later on today. What that does is take a look at the planet down below to analyze ocean happenings. The space station itself has a unique vantage point, look down at the planet below, so they can take some photos to take a look at what's going on down in the waters of planet Earth. As you saw, Chris Cassidy and Luca Parmitano working on that spacesuit today. Karen Nyberg also working on the spheres in space, the spheres experiment, spheres rings to be exact. What that is 3 different satellites, sometimes 2 different satellites that fly throughout the space station complex on pre-programmed maneuvers. Are sort of semi-autonomous in the sense that they can sense each other. This tests formation flying of these 2 satellites and also whether there could be some wireless power transfer between the 2. So she will work on that later on today. Luca Parmitano working on InSpace 3. As we talked about at the top of the broadcast, this takes a look at colloids. Colloids are something that several different crews have looked at through a variety of different experiments. It sounds a little complicated, even though it's not. There are some solid structures that are inside fluids, and what they do is apply a magnetic field to it, and those fluids can become solids. Now, what that does is lead to direct applications here on Earth in terms of building things like buildings, skyscrapers, and bridges. That can withstand earthquakes, which obviously would be of benefit to people in different parts of the world.
Okay, can you tell me what black button?
Yeah, I have those words.
A black button on the rings? There, I see a couple.
And Karen, that black button is next to the LCD screen.
Okay, the LCD selector button?
Yes, those are the correct words.
Okay, copy that. So I hold that down, turn the power off, and then or power on, and then I can release it.
And that's correct, but then also, too, right after that, verify there's no character showing on the screen.
Karen Nyberg there talking with ground teams. We're taking a look at Luca Parmitano. That is the Microgravity Sciences glove box that he's in front of. It's about the size of a large aquarium, but it allows different types of experiments to take place inside. The crew members can reach inside and manipulate those experiments. This is the home of InSpace 3 that we were just talking about.
And Karen, Huntsville back with you on 2. Just information only.
Now, the reason that these colloids are examined on board the space station is because there is no gravity. As you can imagine, if you have a bunch of sediment or particles inside a fluid, they tend to settle on Earth. Gravity sort of pulls it down to the bottom. It's a little bit hard or harder to study them on the ground. So if you get up in space where there's no gravity, those particles are more evenly distributed throughout the actual fluid, which makes studying it a bit more
LOS again, just for your awareness.
Enhanced and better serving for the scientist on the ground.
Okay, copy that. Thanks a lot.
Currently, the International Space Station's out over the South Pacific Ocean, about to make a pass up over parts of Central America and over southern tip of Florida, Florida Keys, and up over the Atlantic Ocean. As we've been talking about, the crew is very busy today working on some of the spacesuit investigation, also quite a bit of experiment work taking place today. One of the other items that they're working on is to begin to identify items that are going to be packed inside the Orbital Sciences Cygnus cargo vehicle, as it is due to come up to the station in September. Orbital, of course, is the second of NASA's 2 partners that were part of the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program. Now, what COTS did, as the shuttle era was beginning to wind down, took a look at whether industry within the United States, private and public companies, could help partner with NASA to create 2 brand new cargo vehicles to service the International Space Station. Without the shuttle flying up there, the U.S. lost the ability to send up its own cargo and its own vehicles up to the orbiting complex. Of course, there is the European Space Agency's Automated Transfer Vehicle, as well as the Japanese HTV. Both of those are up on board the space station right now, but you're taking a look at Cygnus. What Cygnus will do will join the SpaceX Dragon as the 2 U.S. companies sending cargo up to the International Space Station for NASA. Now, SpaceX started back in 2006. It got a bit of a jump on Orbital. Orbital did not join the COTS program until 2008. But, of course, SpaceX started flying regular flights to the space station back in 2012. Orbital is due to fly a demonstration mission coming up on September the 17th. That is the targeted launch day from the Wallops Flight Facility. And if that all goes according to plan, Orbital should get up to the space station about September 22nd. We're going to take a look now at an update on the COTS program and what's ahead for this orbital mission coming up in September.
With a half-century of spaceflight experience already in hand, America's space program is now pushing ahead on parallel paths, revolutionary and complementary paths. On one, NASA is building a space launch system and Orion spacecraft to carry astronauts farther from Earth than we've ever gone before, to an asteroid and eventually to Mars. On the other path, NASA is leaning on American-based private companies to help supply our orbiting laboratory, the International Space Station. As the Space Shuttle era came to a close, NASA knew it needed help to supply the station with tons of cargo every year and looked to the private sector.
How can we partner with industry? How can NASA be a partner with commercial industry and take advantage of the ingenuity and innovation that exists in American industry, as well as the entrepreneurial spirit to develop these new capabilities, just like any new product can be brought to market?
The answer was the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Program. Rather than NASA deciding on a spacecraft design down to the nuts and bolts, it made seed money available to private industry to develop their own cargo ships that could carry supplies to the space station, where human crews had been working for more than a dozen years. California-based SpaceX won its COTS agreement in 2006. Its Dragon spacecraft successfully performed a test flight in May 2012 and completed its first fully operational mission late in the year. SpaceX flights continue each year, taking tons of supplies and science up to the station, and just as importantly, returning science experiments back to Earth for study. Now, Virginia-based Orbital Sciences Corporation, which won its COTS agreement in 2008, is about to join the club with its Cygnus spacecraft. After Orbital performs a Cygnus test flight to the station, it too will begin flying routine delivery flights to the orbiting complex.
That will be the final milestone in what we call the Commercial Orbital Transportation System Space Act Agreement that will allow us to transition from that phase of the program into an actual contract with NASA to deliver cargo over 8 missions in about 4 years to the International Space Station.
Cygnus rides to orbit on the Antares, a 2-stage launch vehicle designed to provide reliable access to low Earth orbit for payloads of more than 5,000 kilograms. Its design incorporates components from leading global suppliers and uses subsystems that are already deployed successfully on Orbital's other rockets, the Pegasus, Taurus, and Minotaur launch vehicles that have been flying for years.
But Antares will serve a much broader market than just the space station logistics functions. It will also be used by civil and national security customers in the governmental market, as well as commercial satellite operators.
The Cygnus Advanced Maneuvering Spacecraft, consisting of a service module and a pressurized cargo module, also incorporates elements from flight-proven systems flown by Orbital and its partners. The service module avionics systems are from Orbital's LeoStar and GeoStar satellite lines. The propulsion and solar power systems from the GeoStar communications satellites. The pressurized cargo module is based on the multi-purpose logistics module by Thales Alenia Space, which built the cargo modules that carried supplies to the station 11 times, riding in the payload bay of the space shuttles. With a pressurized volume of nearly 19 cubic meters, Cygnus can deliver a total cargo mass of 2,000 kilograms.
Without the ability to take cargo, you won't be able to keep the station operating as a viable research platform, or even keep the crew there and keep them fed and clothed and all the things that anybody on an outpost would need. And that's really where they are, is on an outpost. So having that lifeline to Earth is very, very important.
Orbital will launch the Antares rocket and Cygnus cargo craft from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. thus opening a new commercial spaceport and strengthening the American commercial launch industry's role in the new future of spaceflight. As SpaceX and Orbital ramp up their supply flights, the International Space Station will continue to serve as our home in space and the site of the scientific discoveries that will allow humankind to venture beyond low Earth orbit, to explore farther from Earth than we've ever been before.
This is Mission Control Houston again. That was a look at the upcoming Orbital Sciences Cygnus flight that's coming up again, targeted for launch on September the 17th with a docking with the space station on September 22nd. Back now on board the space station, that is Luca Parmitano. He is busy working inside the complex. He's got an exercise session coming up here shortly. But later on today, he's going to be getting some items together that will be packed actually inside the Cygnus. So at the end of that mission, which should last for several weeks, that vehicle will come back in and burn up upon re-entry, getting rid of quite a bit of trash from the space station. Sounds routine, but trash is actually a very important thing on board the space station because obviously the more things build up and the more supplies they burn through, and clutter sort of builds up. So getting rid of items that are no longer needed, whether it's food packaging, sometimes it's spare parts, sometimes it's the astronauts' clothing, because of course there's not any washing machines on board, so they actually throw their clothes away. It's important to have vehicles that can take away this trash and destroy it upon re-entry. There's a look outside at the station's robotic arm with Dexter on the end of it. Later today, the ground controllers are going to send commands to enable Dexter to move what's known as the Space Test Project Number 4 payload from the exposed pallet that's currently on the forward end of the Kibo module back onto the station's truss. This pallet came up on HTV, that's the Japanese cargo vehicle that's currently docked to the bottom side of the Harmony node. They're going to move some spare parts off of that, and ultimately that pallet will be put back inside HTV. And then HTV should have its hatches closed on September the 4th and then undocked shortly after that. It will also be destroyed upon re-entry after it gets detached from the station. There's Kara Nyberg. She's been working on the Spheres Rings project. You're getting a sense of exactly why they call it that. You see the big giant ring around the Spheres robot. That's one of them. Again, this is a new version of the ongoing Spheres activities. You've seen them here on NASA television quite a bit. These satellites look a little bit different than their predecessors, but they're designed to do formation flying and also power transfer without touching each other. So she's working on that throughout the rest of her day.
Sphere station on 3.
MIT.
Karen, we're here with you on 3.
Airlock Houston on Space to Ground 2 for Chris when you're able.
Karen Huntsville's with you on 2. We have a handover coming up, but whenever we come back, AOS for KU, you can contact MIT on Space to Ground 3, and they'll have additional words.
Station, this is MIT on SG3. Karen, we're back with you.
Welcome back. I am running the blue one right now. The first time I did the enable and hit run, and actually the same thing happened in the red when we were out of comm, and I forgot to mention that. It very quickly finished. It had a score of 151, and then I ran it again, and it ran really well and ended up with, or ran through the whole thing and had a score of 156. So anyway, so I did that with the blue as well. The first time it within a couple seconds showed a score of 151. Anyway, then I unpowered it, wait 10 seconds, and did it again, and now it seems to be running fine.
Karen, those are great news. Thank you.
Karen Nyberg there talking with ground teams as she continues to set up the Spheres Rings experiment. As we talked about, it's a different version of Spheres. It looks a little bit different if you got a look at it a minute ago. There's big rings that she's mounting onto the Sphere satellites themselves. She is actually running some test runs of this experiment today. They do it inside the Kibo laboratory because there's actually beacons set up inside Kibo that allow the Sphere satellites to fly. But there you see it looks like a big giant steering wheel from a car, but that is the Spheres satellite there in the middle with the ring around it.
The bootload of the Blue Sphere, and then we'll move on.
Nyberg has been on board the space station with Luca Parmitano and Fyodor Yurchikhin ever since the end of May. So she's moving along through her expedition. She and the rest of her crew members will come home coming up in November. Chris Cassidy, Alexander Mazurkin, Pavel Vinogradov have significantly less time ahead of them on board the space station. They have been on board since March, and they are due to come home the night of September the 10th here in the U.S. That'll be September the 11th at the landing site. So they're in their final weeks on board the complex. These three that you see there on the screen will be landing in Kazakhstan, the same country from which they launched back in March. They've actually already begun departure preparations on board the space station, spending about an hour this week getting things ready to come home.
Spheres, station on 3.
Go for MIT.
Yeah, what condition do the spheres and the satellite or the rings need to be in when I load the program for the checkout?
Satellites need to be both on, and the rings don't need to be on. And from now on, power on and off the rings will be normal. You won't have to push this black button anymore. Just flipping the switch will be okay from now on.
Okay, so I should have both spheres on, and I'm sorry, should the rings be on or off initially?
Just to save battery, you can leave them off.
Okay, copy that.
Station on 2 for HTV cargo. Go ahead on 2, Chris. Hey, Hal. How are you? Question. Karen, I think, called earlier today asking about an MO2 bag for 1027. And I've got some free time this afternoon. I was looking to dive into the HTV cargo, but I think that bag is sort of the linchpin in moving forward. So I was wondering if you guys have any words on that.
And Chris, that MO2 bag can be stowed in the P2 corridor. We think that's best for CG. Do you think it's going to fit there, or do we have to take all the foam out and kind of parcel it out?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what P2 corridor means. To me, there's like a corridor, one, a big square in the hole. And so when you say P2 quarter, does that mean put the thing in the square and just put it sort of on the port side? Is that what you mean?
This is Mission Control Houston. We're about to wrap up our broadcast, so we will see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on NASA Television.